Dear friends, welcome to When I Cannot Pray, a series of talks on prayer. Today, we continue to deal with the second part of memory. According to St. John of the Cross, there are a number of functions of the memory. Our memory is so important in our daily lives, and St. John of the Cross highlights the various functions of the memory. So the first function that he mentions in his writing, it is a quality of the memory to make us remember through the form impressed on it about the past. Remembering has much to do with the capacity of the memory to retain the data experienced. There is a short-term memory which keeps the data as long as needed to accomplish the project at hand. There is a long-term memory that is consciously retained. It gets full attention when something novel, noisy, wonderful, or horrifying or of special importance causes us to focus on it. It may then start on the way to becoming established in our memory. Normally, the long-term memories are never lost. Maybe your wedding celebration or ordination day or a jubilee day or the day someone very close to you passes away. When we are attached to past remembrance, our prayer suffers. We get involved in attachment to the past when we attempt to determine for others what their spiritual choices should be based on what we were taught to believe. Remembrance is good insofar as it helps us to persevere in our prayer. We need to be in touch with what the Lord has done and all that He has been doing for us. When we get attached to the glorious past or struggle with the disappointing defeats, we normally fail to be in the present moment. Hope can help us to overcome all these destructive remembrances during prayer, keeping our spirit open to God who is active in us. Now, the second function St. John of the Cross mentions about the memory is forgetting. This is the function the memory exercises on the soul to forget for the sake of being free. We forget many things, and especially bitter, painful things that have happened in our life. This function enables us to live peacefully. Perhaps on various occasions we remember the events and circumstances that are joyful and sometimes bitter. Yet the memory can actively put a stop to such remembrances as quickly as possible. If forgetting is associated with any kind of sickness, it could be termed as amnesia. Progressive loss of memory is the direst result of Alzheimer's disease, a degeneration of the brain that generally strikes in old age. A head injury can also cause amnesia, but often the effect is temporary. Sometimes it can be permanent too. For example, a victim of an accident may lose memories of events just prior to the accident. This is called retrograde amnesia. Severe emotional stress is another cause of amnesia. Victims of crime and battle-scared soldiers may protect themselves from the horrors they have experienced by blotting out the memory completely. So that means the capacity we have is to forget. When we speak of active forgetting, it is a voluntary function of the memory to forget details that are a hindrance to prayer and relationship with God. Such an active forgetting greatly helps us to advance in prayer, and also, I would say, in our relationship with one another. The bitter experiences we had with our life partner, perhaps, if we can actively forget and make a habit of forgetting, then it soothes us and it gives us peace. The third quality of or function of the memory is withdrawing. It is the quality the memory possesses in order to withdraw the soul from the imaginative forms, images, figures about God or other things. This is accomplished in utter hope to approach God more closely. When beset with many images and forms, we cannot draw closer to God because nothing that is imagined is similar to God. Withdrawing means, we have so many images of, God and heaven. We have to withdraw. Withdrawing from images and fantasies is an active attitude on our part to put a stop to such forms, figures, and images, to be free for the direct intervention of God in us. Now we may ask, how is it possible to withdraw from images and forms during prayer? In the initial stages of prayer, God attracts us through holy images and forms. And that is a normal thing. We may be attracted towards an image, and that particular image recurs in our memory during prayer. It is a very good practice to follow these images as far as they can help us to stay in prayer. Once we cannot have them because God Himself withdraws them, we should never attempt at forming images in our memory. This is a very important function of prayer. It is our attempt at forming images in our mind that obstructs prayer. When they spontaneously occur, there is no danger from them. Withdrawing the function of the memory precisely lies in not attempting to form images by forcing our mind. For example, when you come for prayer, if you are trying to provoke images of God, saints, and angels and heaven, then it obstructs prayer. We need to train ourselves for silent prayer. Now, the fourth function is silencing. Silence leads us to keep our eyes on God. It is in silence that we wait for God to act. This silencing of the memory is in fact a function that helps us to be free from figures, forms, categories, ideas, and judgments in our imagination and mind. This could be called silent indifference to all the imaginations and fantasies that play their role in our mind during prayer. When we come for prayer, a lot of images invade our minds. What can we do at this point? Silencing the memory does not mean violently fighting against images. Rather, it is becoming aware of these images and scrutinizing them one after another. This scrutiny will help us to understand why such images come during prayer. Maybe that we are attracted to a person or a thing. We need to make an inner effort at detaching ourselves from these disturbing images for God's sake in pure hope. Silence contributes to freedom of the spirit. Now, the fifth function of the memory, according to St. John of the Cross, is being mute, M-U-T-E. This is the capacity of the memory to close the doors of the soul to all distractions in order to listen to God. This function is greatly similar to the exercise of silence, but it has its own peculiar nature. Being mute signifies just closing the door of our soul to them, to the distractions around. When the intellect proposes many ideas to the memory, it can simply be mute without any active reaction to such stimulations of the intellect. Images and ideas flow in our mind incessantly during prayer. There is actually no end to such things. We can be distracted only when we pay attention to such things. Therefore, when the memory is mute to such distractions, we experience a holy stillness within us. This holy solitude turns out to be the audience chamber of God. Now there is the seventh function, which is called dismissing. This function of the memory dismisses all forms and ideas, prejudices, distractions, opinions, and judgments with utter hope in God. Anything that is not related to God is simply dismissed and regarded as irrelevant for prayer. The virtue of hope makes the memory wait and watch in total expectation of God. This attitude can be translated as staying in utter hope for God without clinging to any object, figure, or image or form. This function can be regarded almost similar to other functions like withdrawing, silencing, or being mute. Yet, we can find some features of this function not exactly akin to other functions. When anything that is not relevant to prayer and God experience is discarded with hope in God, this proves to be actively profitable for intimacy with God. Now, the seventh function of the memory is reflecting. Now, when we come for prayer, we normally take a biblical passage and try to reflect on that. Reflection. This function is exercised in order to reflect on hope and not to reflect on the images and supernatural forms, to avoid preserving their memories in the mind. Any kind of possession, spiritual or material, is utterly against hope, says St. John of the Cross in his book Ascent of Mount Carmel, Book 3, Chapter 7, Paragraph 2. We have enormous capacity to retain or to empty the various images, figures, knowledge, and reflect or not reflect on them. If we entertain images, figures, and ideas through preserving them and reflecting upon them, this can cause in us great agitation during prayer, leading us away from the path of God. If we allow God to move the memory in that real silence in all its functions, the spiritual growth happens in passivity and silence. St. John of the Cross affirms, a person will hardly be found whose union with God is so continuous that his faculty or her faculties without any form are always divinely moved. Nevertheless, there are those who are very habitually moved by God and not by themselves in their operations. As St. Paul says, the children of God, those who are transformed in God and united to Him, are moved by the Spirit of God, that is, moved to divine works in their faculties. Ascent of Mount Carmel, Book 3, Chapter 2, Paragraph 16. When progressively we keep the functioning of the memory only for God, it becomes more and more spiritual in nature. In the measure we, through our own efforts, enter into the emptiness of forms, we will receive from God the possession of union. God effects this union in us passively. Thus, God will give the habit of perfect divine union when He is pleased to do so and in accordance with our preparation. Then prayer becomes more effective and efficacious when the memory is trained actively to hold check on the material that is stored in it and the ideas the intellect supplies to it. This checking of the memory is not repression or suppression of images and ideas. We know that the function of the memory does not solely refer to the recollection of the things past, but includes also the awareness of the present and the expectation of the future. Hence, the ideal attitude of the memory for prayer should be training it to be in the present in loving awareness. Its extension to the past with regard to affections could fittingly be termed nostalgic remembrance, and to the future as foreseeing expectation. Present, past, and future make up the entirety of human time and history, which Christian faith sees as a history of salvation, in which God intervenes to forgive and sanctify His chosen ones. When we speak of prayer, the functioning of the memory should be extended neither to the past nor to the future, but be limited only to the present moment. Catechism of the Catholic Church says, time is in the hands of the Father. When we pray, we meet Him in the present moment, neither yesterday nor tomorrow, but today. If only you would listen to Him today, do not harden your heart. Psalm 95, verse 5. Praying in the events of each day and at any moment is one of the secrets of the kingdom revealed to the little ones, the poor of the Beatitude. It is important to knit the humble daily situation with prayer. Catechism of the Catholic Church, Numbers 2650 to 60. Dear friends, this has been a bit longer conference, but we understand that memory has a lot to do during our prayer. You know, a lot of time of our silent prayer is spent projecting about the future or thinking about the past. We fail to be there in the present moment. When we are capable of training ourselves to be in the present moment, keeping away all our thoughts, ideas, forms and figures away from our memory, and we descend into that silence of the soul at the center of our being, then certainly prayer really happens. What is prayer? Loving God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, and with all our strength. And then that helps us to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Past and future cannot help us to be rooted in the present moment. If we can train ourselves during prayer, as I told you, I go back to my affirmation. Early in the morning when you get up, sit on your bed for 10 to 15 minutes. Close your eyes. Keep all your distractions away. Keep the thoughts about your job, work and children, your husband, your family, your worries and your tensions away. Come to that silent moment deep inside yourself. You see, when those 10 minutes are over, you are more energized than any other physical exercise or any other energizing tablet or vitamin tablets. I tell you, this is a spiritual tonic early in the morning. It is really strengthening and it gives you totally different perspective about life. It strengthens you from within because you are in touch with the source of your existence, God, certainly He will help us. Our Father who is in heaven, He will guide us, inspire us, strengthen us, and lead us. God bless you.